The prices of food lately are getting astronomical. You guys, I know everyone feels it. No matter whether you are buying regular produce, organic produce, somewhere in between, it's getting expensive. So, I just wanted to take you along a week of me cooking and kind of show you how someone who eats organic ish how that works for me, kind of what my money saving tips are, and how I make do. So, right now I am getting some chicken broth going. I got this organic chicken at Costco. It is the cheapest place I've found organic chicken. Everywhere that I've tried to get it locally, unfortunately, every time I try to go, it's always out. So it goes quickly at the farmer's market. So Costco is kind of my go-to. But what I do is I just cook it in the Instapot. I pick it off and I separate the meat, and then I throw the bones back in there, and I put a decent amount of liquid in there when I cook the chicken, and so that I get all of those flavors and drippings. I save all of my carrots, my onions, my garlic, all of those like root ends that you don't end up using when you're cooking. I save that in a freezer bag, and I throw that in my Instapot, and I make some bone broth from it. So I do have a totally detailed recipe on my channel if you're looking for more detail on how to make bone broth. But that actually made 12 cups of bone broth, which was a ton. And if you buy that at the store, that's at least like $5-6 for 4 cups. So definitely saving a ton of money there and still getting all of the nutrients. Here I am cutting up some tomatillos, onions, garlic, and I am putting that into the oven. And you can see me, I am doing exactly what I said that I do with my bone broth. Is I'm starting my next veggie scrap bag, and I'm taking all of these things here. You can use the skins of the onions and the garlic, and that is perfectly fine. So I let that sit for like 16 plus hours. It was overnight. This is the next morning, Monday morning actually. So I did a little bit of prep on Sunday, and I am just straining it in the sink here. I have a bowl underneath. That's where it's all going. I promise I'm not dumping it right into the sink here. But I am just prepping that for later so that I can make our soup tonight, which was really good. And I'm cleaning out the Instapot container or dish here so that I can get started on our beans for our soup. So the next thing that I recommend, if you can, make your own beans. Now, beans are already pretty cheap canned, but if you buy them in the baggies and you cook them yourself, it's even cheaper and, in my opinion, even more flavorful, and just allows you to really control the spices. So I'm putting an entire, I think it's a 1 pound bag here, and it couldn't have cost me more than about like $2 or so. I fill up and cover it with water. I never soak my beans when I make them in the Instapot when I pressure cook them. It's such a quick hack to make it go quicker. I just put some mild spices in here, some garlic, salt, pepper, and I think I put some onion flakes in here because I was going to use it for more than one recipe, so I didn't want to make it too flavored in one direction. So I think one of the other things that is the biggest money saver is making your own bread. And once you have a really established sourdough starter, or if you want to make yeast bread too, that's totally great too. You don't get as much of the gut benefit with yeast, but I think sourdough is great for that. But then I always, I don't really follow a lot of the sourdough rules. If you've seen my most recent video on that, you probably know exactly how I make my sourdough. I don't really measure much, but I think what people kind of sleep on is the same day bake. I think when you start sourdough, you think you have to have all this like timed out, all of this. I make same day bakes all the time, and that's what I did here. So that was me prepping a dough that I had made actually that morning, so it would only fermented that whole day. And here I just put the tomatillos and onions that I had made the night before into the boiling broth, and I took my immersion blender and blended it all up. So my goal was here to make kind of like an enchilada type of soup. So I have like the tomatillo flavors in there, along with the chicken broth. And then I'm going to take our beans that are ready, which by the way, I pressure cook these for 2 hours. I find that that's the perfect amount of time And I probably put about like 2 cups or so in here. I didn't measure that out, but I put that in there and I just kind of let that sit. And in the meantime, I took out that chicken that I had made the night before, and I did 2 whole rotisserie chickens. So the amount of chicken that I took out here was probably about the amount of 1 rotisserie chicken. So you can definitely do as much or as little as you like. I like a heavier chicken in there just so that we get all of that protein. And I didn't have a ton of other ingredients in this soup, so it definitely helped kind of fill our bellies a little bit. And then I also decided to cut up 1 pepper in there, and I had bought some green and red peppers, and this red pepper was actually from one of our local fruit and veggie stands. And I find that that's a really good way to get local vegetables that you can understand and know like what is in, like how they grow it. Like, do they use glyphosate or like Roundup? And I've already talked to this food stand, and I understand like how they grow their stuff. They're not certified organic, but they do not use a lot of the harmful pesticides. And I did end up putting a thing of cream cheese in here. I'm not sure I loved that texture in there. I was kind of just winging the recipe, to be honest. And I think if I were to change it next time, I would just put like some cheese on top and maybe skip the cream cheese. It tasted really good, but texture wise, it was just a little odd. But the flavor was absolutely there. I sprinkled some cheese on top and put some fresh cilantro from my green stock, which you guys, the green stock, I love it. It has been a great option while we're renting here and I don't have my full homestead operation. And I'll link them in my description below if you guys are short on space. It is an awesome, awesome tool. So it is the next day and I am putting together like my favorite, I don't want to cook and how can I make this super, super easy meal? That's like, this is my favorite. So it could not be easier than beans and rice, but it is like a stepped up, upgraded version. And this is meat that I actually got locally. Again, this is from that farm stand, and they grass feed their beef, and then they do grain finish, but they don't use any antibiotics, and I know exactly where it's coming from. It's locally in Georgia. I love knowing where my meat comes from when I can, and so it is a little bit more expensive than what you would buy in the store. And I like, those are the things where some things I don't always buy organic, and this isn't necessarily organic, but it is, a little bit of a healthier beef in my opinion, because you're not getting mixed cows and you are just kind of knowing where it comes from. So, and then here we are adding in that chicken broth, and we also added the beans that we made the night before and a little bit of rice and some more like taco Mexican type of seasonings. You can really do any kind of seasonings you want here. And I just crumble up some cheese that I got from the store. I like to use brick cheese because it doesn't have the like anti-separation or really anti-caking agents that a lot of the shredded cheese that you get from the store has, which doesn't make it melt as well. And I just bring it up to a boil and I cover it, and then I cook it a little bit longer than the rice calls for typically, and you want to stir it a little bit as you cook, but once it sets, it is so good. And this was good for a couple nights, and actually we ate it the next night and were able to go on a walk in one of our favorite nature centers because I did not have to cook. So this is the next night, and I am making some pulled beef. We're gonna make some Philly cheesesteak type of sandwiches, and I haven't really made these before, and there's a few things I would change, I think, from initially making them, but I will give you guys a great idea and great start for making it. The first thing I would change would be making a lot more dough. I honestly just kind of winged the amount that I would need, and it only made 4 sandwiches with the amount of bread. We had plenty of meat left over, so I would definitely make more on the 600 grams or like 4 to 5 cups of flour. I think I did more closer to like 3, so I definitely make more here, and it was definitely a stickier dough, but I definitely saved a ton of money by not buying like sandwich subs or anything like that. Making your own bread just tastes so much better, you guys. It just really does. And B, it allows for flexibility too, because if I didn't want to make this night, I made this like on Thursday night, I think. If I had bought this bread on Sunday when I usually do my grocery shopping, it could be like stale by then, and this way it's absolutely fresh. It allows flexibility in, how I cook things during the week, and that really does help save on groceries in the long run if you are not wasting food because it has gone bad. So here I am chopping up some green peppers and some onions. I'm going to throw that in my skillet with some butter and really just saute those down so they get really nice and caramelized. And this was a really great topping on the sub. Here you can see my butter. I don't typically use organic butter, mostly because I haven't found a good place that sells it. And we use so much butter that it is hard for me to be able to afford that much organic butter. But it is something that I would love to switch to in the long run. But I do other things like saving bacon grease, and I just recently bought some lard from a local farmer that I plan on rendering down. And so there are alternatives to just butter for your cooking oil, and ways that you can make it just a little bit healthier but at a cheaper price, or I should say cheaper at a better price. So here I am just taking the beef out of the Instapot. I put it in there for 2 hours. And you guys, this was so hot out of the oven, but we were kind of in a rush today. And I was like, I did not have time to wait for it to cool down. So, if you have time, make these a little bit ahead of time. You guys can see how hot it was. So I just put it face down in the pan with the same pan with all the butter on it, and just to get a nice little crisp on it. And then I put on some provolone cheese and all of the beef and the really yummy toppings. And I also put some tomato on there too for a little extra added veggie. You guys, this was so good. And if you like other meals like this, go ahead and give me a follow and check out all of my other made from scratch meal playlist.